well, business maybe more so, but consumers don't really know ACH. They know direct deposit. That's
Yeah,
that's
for
the
sure.
way that's the way they think of it, right? And I think it'll be similar with FedNow.
Welcome to another episode of FI Today, the podcast for all things banks, credit unions, payments, and more. My name is Kevin Miyamoto, also known as Moto,
Hello, Moto.
and we have a great episode today. Joining me on the call is a dear friend of mine and someone who's really well respected in the industry. He's currently Catalyst Corporate Federal Credit Union's VP of Payment Strategy and Product Innovation, and is the chair of the U.S. Faster Payments Council Educational Awareness Subgroup Committee. So please make a warm round of applause for Glenn Wheeler.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here.
So Glenn, thank you so much for joining. Good to see you again. And I guess to kick off the show today, let's just talk about what got you to this point. Give us a little background about who Glenn Wheeler is, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. Yes. Catalyst Corporate, we're a federal credit union, which is really think of us as an aggregator for credit unions out there. We have roughly 1,400 credit unions across the country that use us for a variety of different services, including payment services. So I have the privilege of being able to work with a great team at Catalyst that is really focused on trying to offer relevant solutions around payments for credit unions to utilize and stay competitive in the marketplace as we go forward. So obviously a big part of my role right now is around instant payments, faster payments. And so we're doing a number of things around that. My background is pretty much dominated in financial services and the payments industry. Part of that background is I was the president and CEO of a non-for-profit payments association called Payments Nation, which was also known as predecessor of the National Clearinghouse Association, not NACHA, but the National Clearinghouse without the automated part of that, and then went on to do a number of other things prior to coming on board to the Catalyst team. So most of those activities were all around trying to find efficiencies and ways that we could make the payments process better. And so the opportunity at Catalyst is really exciting to me because I think we're finally, from an industry perspective, making huge strides in automation, digitalization, and making payments more efficient and faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Glenn, you have the privilege of speaking to hundreds of credit unions across the country every year. Speak to a number of large FIs as well. What are you hearing in the market? What's going on? What are some of the challenges that, if we talk about credit unions specifically, what are some challenges that credit unions are facing today?
So there's more than one. So I'll highlight a few. One of the things that, and we have been talking to a number of credit unions, particularly focused on the upcoming general release of FedNow, faster payments in general. One of the things that comes up pretty regularly as far as challenges is around just having the time and the budgets to be able to stay on top of all the changes that are happening from a digital perspective. There's a common theme is also around cybersecurity, fraud. We get that question in different flavors, but it's all around those kind of related topics. So that's a big concern and a challenge for credit unions is how do I manage and control that and bring safety and soundness to the credit union and to obviously their members. Another big challenge is disintermediation. Certainly, there's been other players that have come into the payment space, fintechs and other providers that, in some cases, can complement things that credit unions are looking to do to better serve their members, and in other respects can be competitive and pulling that relationship away. From a credit union standpoint, it's really so much of that focus is about that relationship with the member, and things that can fracture that are very impactful and concerning to credit unions as well. We've seen in the credit union space over the last several years some significant activity as far as mergers and consolidation. So I think that's another area that credit unions are concerned about. The net result has been that while it pales to the size of some of the largest banks in the country, credit unions are getting bigger.
Mhm.
There's fewer smaller credit unions because of mergers and acquisitions. So, number of things that credit unions are facing, not the least of which being, how do I um, uh, put forth a payment strategy that can incorporate some of the things that are happening specifically around faster payments and instant payments with the new network capabilities.
Yeah, and let's hone in a little bit on that topic because as VP of Payment Strategy and Product Innovation at Catalyst, I'm sure you're having daily conversations with credit union members on the release of FedNow, some RTP conversations, just overall strategy. So talk to me. How are those conversations? How have those been going? And have you noticed a shift since the Fed put a go live date with FedNow?
Yeah, we have, Kevin. It The last several months, we've seen a heightened level of interest from credit unions. There's not, there's a lot more credit unions reaching out to us for information than us needing to reach out to them. They're starting to get the word, and so there's certainly a need for additional knowledge and education about what does this mean? Is it ACH? Is it wires? Is it something else? And so there's a lot of education and things that credit unions just are unsure about. They you know they struggle sometimes for resources and for that knowledge for their teams within their
Mhm.
organizations. And so we're definitely seeing that. But I think on a positive note, we are starting to see a lot more momentum as far as, hey, we don't get the question so much anymore of, I'm not sure I even need to pay attention to instant payments. What there's that's not it. My members aren't asking for it. We used to hear
Mhm.
that a lot of times. We're hearing less and less of that now, and more of this is something that we probably need to get involved with. Now it's a question of timing and at what level.
Ye-
So
Yeah, and I
those are the
completely
bigger.
agree. We actually had Reed from the FBC on the other day, and we were talking about this how pre-COVID, especially for a lot of credit unions and community banks, mostly around your surrounding geographic area is your member base or customer base, right?
Mhm.
And with
Right.
COVID, you went more digital. You had a lot of digital only banks pop up. Large national banks focus a lot more on digital so they could reach more remote parts of the country. And so what happened was you had a group of customers who now are used to enacting or interacting with their bank in a digital only format or
Yeah.
communication, if you will, right? And so, from our standpoint, while the credit unions and community banks are providing great service and relationships to those members and those customers are also getting offers from large national banks or digital only
Yes.
banks that they might not have gotten a couple of years ago. And so competition is really fierce in that space right now.
It certainly is, and controlling the data and knowing where that data is, and keeping that as a forefront of understanding within those relationships is just really critical as you start thinking about a digital environment. Like I said, you know, we get the questions and concerns around data security and keeping, how do I best manage that and keep control of that, and not compromise data for members at credit unions. So it's a big issue.
Yeah, I mean, data. We could have a whole. We might have to invite you
Yeah.
back on. There's a whole another discussion around data. Just we have data from a security standpoint, and then we also have using data to make better data-driven decisions about your portfolio, or leveraging data to provide personalization to your members or your customers. So there's a big data topic that needs to be addressed, because I agree with you. Financial institutions across the board, not just credit unions, but all of them, really aren't doing a good job of leveraging data. And even if they have the data, it's then the question of, well, what do I do with it? How is it going to impact my customers, and how can we make it meaningful so that people are making better decisions off of it?
And you've got so many additional players in the space than you may have had it historically, right? You've got Apple Pays and Google Pays, and you've got other large fintech organizations that are offering services that can disintermediate certainly organizations such as credit unions, and but nevertheless, it's pretty consistent that you see that consumers really trust their financial institution, and many have long-standing, even generational relationships with a credit union. And so there's an opportunity for credit unions to continue to have relevancy and an importance as far as communities. When I think of credit union, this is also probably relevant for a number of community banks as well. They're kind of a core central to a lot of small towns and middle America, and those relationships are important, and there's value there. And so now it's a matter of how credit unions in particular can maintain the level of service to a degree that other players are having, but also bring that relationship that has been historical, that that was the reason that the individual became a member of a credit union in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in terms of customer or member engagement, it's tends to be a lot more personal at the community bank or credit union level, as opposed to the large FIs. It's much more transactional. So, from
Right.
my standpoint, it's how can technology enable these credit unions and community banks to have that same personal touch, but just in a digital first environment. Um,
Right.
so
Agreed.
there's a lot around that. But again, as you think about your role today as VP of Payment Strategy, with FedNow coming out, how are credit unions thinking about implementing FedNow or RTP or other payment rails or other instant payment options?
So we've seen this to a degree with RTP as well, and I think it's going to have some similarities with FedNow. Many credit unions have adopted out of the gate a receive only posture. So, receive, it's about the ability to have entries posted more quickly to their account holders' accounts. And you're talking about from a financial institution receiving credits. So
Mhm.
getting credits earlier, is a little easier business case sometimes than when I start factoring in send and debits and there's a potential additional a thought around, am I protected from a fraud account takeover perspective? All of those kind of things become deeper questions. But when you're talking about receiving transactions and receiving money, sometimes the business case becomes a little more easily and understanding that, hey, that may be something that I can do. I think
Mhm.
the number of credit unions that even start out as receive only will over time start seeing the value in the business case to incorporate send. So I don't think it's going to be one of these where it's only a handful of banks sending through FedNow and RTP and everybody else is out there receiving. I don't think that'll be the case. I think over time you will start seeing more and more. But I do think there will be a predominance of credit unions that, at least out of the gate, will start out in a receive only mode and
Mhm.
then look for ways how they can utilize send in a way that provides some value to their members.
And just to make sure that I'm tracking you correctly and our listeners understand, when you say receive only, Glenn, that means that they are in fact part of the FedNow or RTP network where they can receive those transactions, but they're
Yes.
not initiating the
Yeah.
payout or sending of those transactions.
Correct. They would be receiving credit transfers from those two networks and not initiating or sending credit transfers.
Yep, yep, got it. And I guess for a lot of your members today, is that the advice that you're, or is that what's happening out there where they are dipping their toes first and then we'll figure out the send side later?
Yes, yes. So so we're engaged with a handful of credit unions as far as the alpha beta testing phase for FedNow, and they will come out of the gate as receiving only, and there's an interest level in send, but they want to start with receive, and then we'll layer in send hopefully later this year, or if not, sometime early next year.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess, from your perspective, Glenn, is, let's say that I'm Miyamoto Credit Union of Fairfax, and I'm interested in receive only FedNow or RTP, right?
Mhm.
What advice would you give me to say, hey, Kevin, here's how to get started. Here's how simple it can be. Yeah, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, there's several things that come to mind. One is um, an understanding that RTP and FedNow are really just the network, the rail, the capability to get a transaction from here to there. But there's still the need for a back end and a front end solution to provide a user experience to be able to use these new capabilities. I think it'll be similar to ACH, for example. Consumers and businesses, well, business maybe more so, but consumers don't really know ACH. They know direct deposit. that's
Yeah,
that's
for
the
sure.
way that's the way they think of it, right? And I think it'll be similar with FedNow. This will be a back end, back office way to facilitate instant payments, but you still will need that processing capabilities and that front end solution to make that reality, give that as a solution. So I don't even think the term Fed Now or RTP is going to transition into the general
Yeah, completely.
terminology that's being used, right?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I wholeheartedly complete agree with you, Glenn. If you think about a normal bank terminology, it could be you need to upload your Nacha file via your ERP and
Right.
include whether your ACH is PPD, CCD, or TE. Like, what does that mean to anyone, right? Who's outside of payments.
No, 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 no. So, but it'll be incumbent on the credit union to figure out that solution to provide that front end experience and that processing to be able to connect to FedNow and
Absolutely.
RTP, right?
Yeah, I mean, it
If it,
makes so much more sense if it's, hey, you can, initiate this Fed now payment with blah 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 irrevocability and go through the jargon, or you could say, hey, we actually have a new product built for title companies that easily allows you to receive funds that they can't crawl back at all, and you
yeah,
get it within seconds. And by the way, it's a fraction of the cost of a wire.
yes,
Like
Yes.
that to me as a title, a title company owner, that makes a lot of sense. The first way described and it's not, packaged together, that might be lost on me.
Yes, and that's the way I think it will be introduced to the general public, right? And so it'll
Hmm.
be up to, in our case, credit unions to be able to work with various providers that have that connectivity to those networks and provide the solution. And one of the biggest things with RTP and FedNow, and the reason that they're coming into existence is, we've kind of figured out ways to use existing payment rails to make stuff work, right? That I mean, we um, whether it be from push to card or now same day ACH versus next day ACH, we found ways to work within the framework that we were in before. But with a solution like FedNow, one of the key differentiators is the instantaneous settlement of the dollars between the financial institutions at the same time as the transaction flow. And so that's a big difference. And so we spent a lot of time trying to help educate credit unions on capabilities and opportunities around settlement, because we think, just based on the general mix, and this isn't an absolute, but we think on the general mix of transactions that are out there, that credit unions, even those that do go into a send capability along with receive, are going to be net receivers. We
Hmm.
think the majority of them will be. And so,
Hmm.
what does that mean? What does that mean in managing their settlement dollars, their account dollars that are going to be coming in earlier as credits for those received transactions, and managing that?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and the other thing too, in terms of getting started with this whole instant payment journey, I mean, the Faster Payments Council is just a great resource. I know you're doing a great job leading up the education and awareness work group. So why don't we just touch on that for a few minutes? What are some of the new things that you all are working on?
Sure. Yes. And ditto on that. You're doing a great job working with initiatives going on at Faster Payments Council as well. So for the education and awareness work group, we've got a number of different subgroups that we've got ongoing. The part of the relationship with the NACHA organization around certifications around the faster payments professionals that are being developed is in partnership to no small extent with some of the work that's happening within the education and awareness work group, working on everything from a, uh, a defined glossary of terms that we've been working on and continue to build. A frequently asked questions section within the FPC website to provide some of this informational resources. One of the things that we spent a good deal of time here recently is actually from some feedback we got at the last Faster Payments Council conference, which was in the spring, which was that there was a need, there was a demand out there for more information around use cases and specific use cases. So we're spending some time on ways that we can not just talk about use cases, because I think that's been generally talked about in the industry for, since the startup of RTP.
Hmm.
But I think we're now at a point that it's not necessarily just about, oh, let's think up all the potential use cases that instant payments can apply to. But I think we're now starting to transition more into case studies and actual true examples of the way that instant payments are working and benefiting consumers and businesses. So we're trying to put some more effort around education around those use cases, and hopefully that will be relatable to organizations that may still be trying to decide at what level they go about participating in instant payments.
Yeah, I mean, we've had lots of guests on this show, and it always comes back to education, making sure that, if you're a practitioner, corporate too, but if you're a practitioner, understanding the differences between immediate versus same day versus instant versus, irrevocable, or, just having a baseline knowledge to be able to talk about what's the difference between FedNow and Zelle or Venmo, or, being able to have that baseline knowledge and speaking about it and articulating the value to your customers or your members. There's a big gap there. And I know the Educational Awareness Work Group and the FBC is doing a great job to fill that. So continue the good work there, Glenn. It's definitely needed in the market.
Yeah, no, it's a great organization to be involved with. Great talent and individuals that are on the work groups, at the staff. It's a really good organization to be a part of.
Yeah, yeah. And so, Glenn, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what is your advice to credit unions as they're thinking about embarking on this FedNow journey? If you could give them one or two or three pieces of advice, or it's, hey, if you're listening to this podcast, here are 3 things that you can do today to put yourself in a better position, what would those be?
Well, get educated. Start talking to those organizations or those individuals that you have trusted relationships with to find information, whether it's the Faster Payments Council or other organizations. Start getting your staff educated, because we think that instant payments is not a question of do I or do I not participate. If you're going to be a financial institution and deliver a payments experience to your consumers and your businesses, we think it's table stakes now. So it's really not that type of a question. The question, in my mind, comes to a decisioning on if there are obvious use cases that would initiate the sending credit transfers initially, or if this receive only start mode makes the most sense. And it well could be just receive initially, but that's another thing that I would suggest needs to be part of those considerations. To me, it's not doing it. It's at what level you start doing it, and how do I position resources and prioritization to make that happen. And so those are some of the things that I think credit unions really need to focus on and take into consideration.
Absolutely. So Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Lots of great advice and wisdom in there. And for those of you listening, we'll see you on the next one.